Before we get into today's episode, I want to take a moment to let you know that we talk openly about suicide, grief, and the loss of a child. If any of those subjects are difficult for you right now, please take care of yourself first. There are links in the show notes to support if you need them. Today I'm sitting down with Chris Coulter, founder of MentorWell, joining me all the way from Toronto in Canada. In 2015, Chris lost his 14-year-old daughter, Maddie, to suicide. And what he has done with that loss, the courage, the purpose, the absolute refusal to let Maddie's story end there, is one of the most moving things I have heard in all the conversations I've had on the podcast. What strikes me most about Chris is his openness. There is no performance here, no polished grief, just a father who has walked through the hardest thing imaginable and come out the other side with more compassion, more wisdom, and a genuine desire to help other families spot the signs before it's too late. We talk about Maddie, about the warning signs he wished he'd recognised, and about what grief actually does to you over the space of 10, 11 years in his case since he lost his daughter. Not the version people tell you about, but the real version, and how he now feels. Maddie is beside him every single day as his co-pilot in this work. We also talk about something that every parent needs to hear, how to actually listen to your teenager, not fix, not advise, listen. And this is one of those conversations that stays with you. I'm so glad Chris said yes to coming on the podcast, so I hope you find the conversation as valuable as I did. Okay, welcome to the podcast, Chris Coulter. It's so good to have you. Thank you for being here.
Hey, Fran. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Okay, so for my listeners, would you mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about who you are and how you've ended up to be on the podcast today?
My name is Chris Coulter. I am from Toronto, Canada. I think we connected through LinkedIn. I think you saw some of my posts. And I write a lot about the challenges that I went through with my daughter, Maddie, who we tragically lost to suicide in 2015. And she was 14 years old. So I guess what we had the choice to be able to do a number of things in life. We can choose to brood and to be forever upset. Not that I'm not, but we also have the opportunity to be able to choose to do something purposeful and to change the outcome, if not for ourselves, for another family. And that is what I started the MentorWell, which was originally intended as a mentorship program for kids who were struggling a little bit, who lacked direction. But things end up changing a little bit for me because parents were coming to me instead of going to therapy. They said, "Hey, Chris, I think my child would rather see a mentor than a therapist." And so what I ended up having to do was going further upstream. I needed to educate parents on signs and signals that they, for the most part, have been dismissing. And it's those signals that we need to pay better attention to. So that was kind of the premise. And then it's kind of expanded from there. So it has been, it's Maddie's legacy project. I get to do this work with her alongside me every single day. And our goal is really just to give another family a different outcome than the one we had. Yeah. And that is our silver lining if we're successful.
Yeah, that's such important work. And that was what drew me to you when like you say, through LinkedIn, because I just feel it's so important to have these conversations and have them out in the open. And what impressed me so much about your posts and the way you speak about Maddie and her legacy is that you want to be able to help other families to prevent them going through what you've been through. And there's a really important truth piece around that, because there's so much shame connected to death by suicide, isn't there? And obviously the grief, I know we've talked about it, is ongoing and it's never going to go away. And however you can support families, whether that's prevention or, sadly after it's happened, then it's good work to be doing, isn't it? So that was what really drew me to you. So tell me about Maddie. Who was she?
Oh, Maddie was this larger than life kid. She was my firstborn, the first girl in our family. And she was smart. She had a wicked sense of humor. When she was born, she had more hair than her dad, but she had my big eyes. And there's something about the dynamic between a father and a daughter. It's not perfect by any means, but it is exceptionally special. So Maddie was someone who, she wasn't a conformist. She stood her ground on things she believed in. She stood up to bullies, and not that she was bullied, she was very popular. She always had this network of friends she just was instantly likable. And just, unfortunately, a lot of the stories you hear I heard about her didn't come till afterward, where complete strangers would come to me and said, so I just wanted to let you know about a story about how Maddie made me feel. And it's beautiful when someone who you don't know wants to share something beautiful that your daughter did to make them feel seen and them to feel special. And that's who Maddie was.
So she sounds incredible. Just to go back to that time then, what happened, if you don't mind talking about it? How did you go from being this vibrant, popular girl to then obviously being in this situation where she decided to take her own life?
I think there were probably a couple of factors. I think the event that probably triggered it more than anything else was the divorce, the bitter divorce of her mom and I, which happened the year after I had lost my business. She asked for a divorce, and I was fine. Things were copacetic until they weren't. And unfortunately, Maddie was put in a very tenuous situation where her mother wanted to move their kids to Europe, and I was adamant about keeping them in Canada. So Maddie unfortunately became the tug of war in deciding where she and her brothers ultimately would end up, which they ultimately stayed in Canada. But I truly believe she was put in an impossible situation, and she told me as such. So that was certainly a contributing factor. The other thing is she was a competitive swimmer, and she was very successful. She grew early on. She always was exceptional in the pool until she started, you could see the mental anguish. She was a great swimmer, but she was battling the pool. You could just see the weight she was carrying. And so after a 2-day swim meet, or after the first day of a 2-day swim meet, she said, "Dad, can we not go back for the second day?" And I gave her a pass. And unfortunately, that was the last day that she went back in the pool. And I truly believe that kids need to have some form of purpose and exercise and stringent exercise to, especially as teenagers, they need to displace that energy. And when you go from swimming 8 times a week to nothing, I wish I would have handled that differently, because when she quit school, she also kind of lost a bit of her own identity. So I think, coupled with the challenges of being a teenager, these all contributed to ultimately her sadness, her depression, her suicide attempts, and ultimately her being lost.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I completely agree. I do think that kids need that outlet, don't they? It's like it's a release almost, especially with the exercise. Thank you for sharing that. So I know a lot of the work that you do now is working with parents to try and prevent, obviously, this happening to other families. And you have a community on school, don't you? Which I've joined because I am a mum of teenagers as well. And you talk about the signs, so what do you think were the signs? Tell us about the community, first of all, and then also what were the signs that you think that you missed? And were there any warnings? Just talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, first, the school community, it's a group for parents who are going through challenging stuff with their kids, who, let's face it, we're not given a handbook on parenting, let alone parenting teens. They know how to push our buttons. And as a consequence, there's a lot of conflict. And so what parents are constantly looking for strategies and tools and resources. So within that, but the other thing that's really important as well, parents are looking for a community, someone who understands what they're going through. And that's what, when something feels off, is for them. Because there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of fear that tends to get dismissed by other parents. Oh, it's just a phase. Oh, she's just a teenager. It will pass. Unless you live in the thick of the anxiety and the fear, you really don't know what it is you're facing. And for me, there was nothing available back then. And being a single dad, I felt like an island, and I was on my own. So when your child struggles, you struggle too as a parent. So I wanted to create a community that allowed parents an outlet and someone to talk to in the event that what they're facing, and knowing that there's hope and there's other people out there, because you feel so alone while you're going through it. So that's the school community. When something feels off, which is available, and we're almost at 200 members, represented by 20 countries around the world. So that's pretty exciting because it grew organically. And I didn't have to bend their arm like you. Yeah. But as far as going back to your other point, was what do you look for in the event of signs? Things like independence, spending too much time on their phone, isolation. Those are all elements of being a teenager. They want that. I remember I wanted that too. And that's fine. It's the sustained aspect of that. So if someone is spending an inordinate amount of time in the room, they're not wanting to hang out with friends or family over a longer duration. If the things that they used to love, they no longer want to participate in. If there is excessive changes in sleeping patterns or eating patterns, those are all red flags. And kids, sarcasm is the second language of most children or most teens. And anything joking about not wanting to be here. Oh, this place, our house wouldn't miss me. Those little comments like that are also very telltale. But also the interesting thing is boys and girls they show very differently. Girls tend to exude the characteristics that you'd expect from depression and sadness. So sadness, quiet, a lot of emotion and tears. Boys tend to be different. It manifests more in anger or risk taking. And the sign that is probably the most telltale, if you're going through something with your son, all of a sudden, if they go from being very volatile and up and down to then sudden quiet, that's probably one of the biggest red flags. Parents tend to go, oh, yeah, they're just teenagers. That's why I created this tool called the Teen Signal Check, which more than 10,000 parents have trusted it over the last 3 months. And they go through 14 questions and they answer them, and it gives them a score, or it gives them a color code, green, yellow, or red. And it's not a diagnosis, but what it is an awareness tool. So it allows parents to be a lot more discerning and a lot more vigilant about what they're seeing, and it helps to validate whether they should be concerned or not. So getting ahead of the curve, going further upstream, for parents to be able to identify if this is something that's something to be concerned about, or if this normal teenage behavior, that is one of the questions I get asked more than any other question from parents. And Teen Signal Check helps to actually address that.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds amazing. I mean, I think speaking as a parent of two very different boys, one of whom is now 20, the other one is just coming up to his 18th birthday, completely different in every way, emotionally, just in the way that they think and everything. The challenge for me was being able to understand the aggression as a woman, as a mum. Girls don't think like boys, the fighting and the aggression, the testosterone. I mean, it's just so difficult as a woman to relate, basically, to boys in that way. And I think it's a real challenge. I mean, I do feel like I'm sort of coming out of the other side of it now, thankfully. But we did have a couple of hairy years with my eldest son. When he was between 16 and 18, it was a tough old time. So I think anything that you can do to support parents through that time is, brilliant, because like you say, they don't come with a handbook. I did feel like I knew a bit more what I was doing by the time I got to the second one. So I think we've had a gentler time of it, but then he's been away at college, and also he's just a different person, he's much calmer, more emotional. So
let me just jump in there too, Fran, because one thing, a lot of parents think this is all on their teenager. This is a them thing. It is a we thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
The biggest challenge I've seen when there seems to be a butting heads between parents, the next most common question I hear from parents is, how do I communicate with my child without shutting them down? So when your child comes to you and is sharing something with you, it could be just telling a story, or it could be sharing a problem. We as parents tend to jump into fix-it mode. We want to make all their problems disappear. But what they come to us is not necessarily to be fixed. They just want us to be a sounding board. They just want us to lean in and listen without judgment. But unfortunately, we tend to want to jump in, and it comes from a place of love, but they look at it as a place of interference. And so as a consequence, they go into my parents, they just want to give me advice. I don't want advice. I just want to tell them. So I'm just not going to share with them anymore. So that's the second most common question that I get from parents, but it's so important. So parents ask me that question and I just go, how do you have a better communication with your child? Just shut up. And literally that, and this is something that I've told this to parents, because inherently we do jump into that, whether we realize it or not. So the question, and I was taught this by someone about a year and a half ago, and it's brilliant, by the name of Kevin Hines. And he said, if you're in doubt whether they want you to jump in for your advice or whether just to listen, ask them this question. Is this a fix it or a feel it conversation? And so if they want advice, they'll tell you. Unfortunately, most parents, 90% of the cases, want to give advice, and 90% of the time, kids just want to be heard. And if you ask that question, sure as hell, listen to them when they tell you. Don't completely disregard it. But I have had so many parents say, this has changed the dynamic of the way I communicate with my kids.
Oh, that's amazing. So how long after losing Maddie did it take for you to start to function again? Because I can't even imagine how you start to deal with the loss of your daughter. And what did that recovery journey look like for you? And is that ultimately what led you to this work? I assume so, obviously.
I'm not going to lie. The first 5 years were, it was like hell on wheels. I had my own business. I would sit down with great intention. The thing that a lot of people don't understand about traumatic loss is it changes your brain and your ability to remember, your ability to just focus, to make decisions. It really impacts you. I would sit in front of my computer trying to work, and I'd completely get like derailed just by the littlest thing. And I'd probably say I lost 50% when we were going through the challenges with Maddie, 50% of my productivity levels. And then after we lost Maddie, I'd say that 90% of my productivity level went out the window. So the only thing I was able to do, I was able to write. And writing was the thing that probably got me through that. That and my boys. And I was a hockey coach and a coach of other stuff with them. Probably was my saving grace for the first 5 years. Year 5 to 10, it's a little different. The fog starts to lift. The unfortunate thing is you want to change the world, or this was my experience anyways. I had all these things I wanted to do. I wanted to honor and cherish Maddie. And so I said, I've got like 50 ideas that I wanted to undertake. Unfortunately, your fight or flight response, it is still preoccupying everything that happens in your world. So execution, decision-making, the ability to get things done are still impacted. So I started to feel promise that I was coming out of it, but functionally, I was still a long way from it. And I guess around year 10, I was always trying to get back to this person I was before I had lost Maddie. And when I realized I was not supposed to get back to that person, I was supposed to embrace the person who I had become. That was like almost this tipping point for me. And I think the person who I am today, because of Maddie's loss, I think I'm a lot more compassionate, I'm a lot more caring. And I like this version of myself more. I think other people like this version of myself more. I miss aspects of that old person. But you know what? When I made that decision, my relationship with Maddie also changed. And it became less about kind of sadness and regret and reflection. And it became more about kind of cherishing the person she was, remembering who she was, and the laughter that we used to share together, and the happiness and joy that we got from our relationship. Not always, but a lot of the time. So that was when I realized the limitations of myself, as far as, you know what, don't take on 20 things, take on one thing. And the one thing I realized, it can't be this massive problem that you want to do. It needs to be broken down into bite-sized pieces. Because looking at the elephant, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? That's really what it felt like was going on in my head constantly. So that became the genesis for the MentorWell. And from there, it has had a number of different iterations, but I'm still sidelined by grief at times. As I like to refer to it, I get hit by a rogue wave. And I wrote a post about it yesterday about, it's not that the grief gets smaller. You grow around it. It's like a muscle. But like all muscles also need rest. And if you don't rest, you tend to plateau. You can even go backwards. So that is something that I think is really important for people to recognize about grief. And I've learned to be kinder to myself because of what I've gone through. And it's not about feeling sorry for myself. It's just my reality.
And how do you feel talking about Maddie now? Do you think that having gone through that evolution, has it got easier to talk about what happened, or has it just got different?
My relationship with Maddie has, with what happened, that is always going to be the reality. I think I truly believe she is my co-pilot on this journey. She is the reason I do the work I do. And she is the face of the MentorWell. People go, Chris, you're the face of the MentorWell. I go, no, it's not. It's Maddie. It's all about Maddie. And there's something about parents when they see Maddie, they see this angelic, this happy-go-lucky, cheerful, kind picture, and they just go, I guess there's the ability to be able to see their kids in Maddie's likeness, and which is fearful, but I never want to operate from a place of fear. I always want to operate from a place of hope. And I think there's a very distinguishing difference between that. Because I do want parents to have hope, for them to understand, yes, you need to be vigilant. Yes, you need to be hyper aware, but there is a path forward and there is a path through. You just need to get ahead of it sooner than later, because when it goes from prevention to remediation, that takes on a completely separate set of how you deal with something. So I think that is the thing that I want most parents to understand, that by getting ahead of it earlier on, we have more choices as parents. But when they go down that rabbit hole, that place of sadness and depression and anxiety, it takes a different turn in what we can do.
Yeah. If I said to you, what do you wish someone had told you before April 11th, 2015? What would it have been?
Probably be a better listener, to listen more, give advice less. And we're not there to fix our kids' problems. We're there to help guide them through it. I wish that I would have responded differently to what my part in the divorce had done. Do I regret fighting for my kids to stay in Canada? Absolutely not. It got to be really ugly. I just wish my part in it was different.
Yeah.
We can only control our part of the equation, but I wish I had changed. I wish my approach to it had been different.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned that you feel like Maddie's your co-pilot in this project. Do you mean from a spiritual sense, or do you mean more just in the sense that she's the face of your business? Or has there been anything that's happened that's made you feel like that there is life after death? Or I don't know, I'm just interested to know whether you've felt anything like she's around guiding the journey as such.
I guess you do become, when you go through something like this, you become more spiritual, or maybe it's you hold on to hope a little bit harder. When I say Maddie's my co-pilot, I literally feel her right beside me every single day. So yeah, she's not just the face of the MentorWell. She is the MentorWell. And I often ask the question, what would Maddie do? And so just having her as kind of my guide and my sage on this journey is really important. And I know she would be immensely proud of what we are building.
Yeah.
And that's so important in my relationship moving forward with her. So I know it sounds peculiar, sounds surreal, but I believe it in my heart of hearts. And I think that has also helped me become more comfortable with her loss as well. It's funny, I was talking to someone the other day about this, and it actually is part of this book that I'm reading called Positive Intelligence.
Oh, I've read that. It's Sherazad Shamin. I've done his course.
Yeah, well, I decided it's going to be a great enhancement for my business as well.
So for anybody listening that doesn't know what this is, Sherazad Shamin wrote this book called Positive Intelligence, where you have sage steps and you have your PQs, don't you, every day? And it's all about registering those moments of positivity before you allow the negative to take over, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got sort of the devil and the angel. One is the saboteur or the judge on one shoulder, which is often the predominant one in our head that takes over, that doubting Thomas. And then you've got this sage who is on this shoulder talking about all the positives. And so the interesting perspective on this was, and it's even your worst fear or worst nightmare or worst outcome, you can always get 3 gifts from it. And I think it's so true. And it doesn't always appear as soon as it happens. Sometimes it can take hours, days, weeks, or years before you recognize something that was deemed so tragic. You can see the gifts that come from it.
Yeah.
And some of the gifts I've received from Maddie's passing is the MentorWell, our ability to be able to save lives, save children and families from going through the hardship of what we went through. But there's not a second that I would question, well, if given it all over again, I would absolutely, I want my daughter here. And people go, that's still weird. And no, it's not. It's perspective. And I truly do believe that in my heart of hearts, that, you know what, our mindset is everything. So it's interesting you took the positive intelligence course, because I actually just was approved for it yesterday. Because
I went on the grant program, so I did it. I did it through a free grant, which was amazing.
Yeah, and that's what I've got too. So
Amazing. Oh, you'll love it. It's brilliant. Really
okay, that's,
brilliant.
well, we'll have to have an offline conversation about it.
Definitely. I loved it. It really changed my perspective and flipped the way I think about things. You'll love it. Yeah, we'll have to have a separate conversation about that for sure. But what you were saying about Maddie and her being right next to you, I just think that you've built the MentorWell in the spirit of her energy. And that's what you feel, because everything you do and everything that drives you to make this successful, that's her energy, isn't it? You can just feel it. And I love that. It's beautiful. What a beautiful thing to be able to say you're doing. I just think it's wonderful. I'm interested to know, because when somebody has been through what you've been through, and I must admit, I felt it today before coming on to have the conversation with you. It's a huge responsibility to try to talk about a subject like this with integrity, with compassion, with empathy, without coming across as being condescending, judgmental, all the stuff, because like you said, there's so much shame surrounding this as a subject. So if you had any advice for friends or family of people who are in your situation, what would you say to them? How do you start a conversation? How do you talk to people going through that extreme grief, that trauma like you did for that first 5 years? What would your advice be to someone who's trying to support somebody going through that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because grief is greatly misunderstood. And what people think someone needs is often the complete opposite. Silence is not something that I recommend. Um, you don't have to have perfect words to say to the person. Sometimes it's just sitting with them and just letting them share a story or walk you through an album of their lost one. That's really important. Where if you have pictures or a video or a story, people go, won't that be triggering if I share that with them? One of Maddie's friends shared something with me just before Christmas a few years ago. And it was like Christmas had arrived early. And just getting that picture. And it was a fun, playful one that someone had taken a screenshot on Snapchat. And it was Maddie and I having this, like, we had this very, very fun dynamic about us. And we were always kind of playful. Maddie would always take, hey, dad, selfie. And so we'd have some really goofy shots, but really fun shots. And people often would say, wow, I could really just see the love and the energy that you guys shared. So share stories, videos, pictures with someone who has lost to someone, because it is probably going to be the most revered gift you could give them. And the tears that will come will be tears of joy, not tears of sadness. Just don't try to placate them. Just phrases like, oh, they're in a better place now. Don't try to put yourself in their position, because you're never going to understand the full depth of what they've experienced. Just taking things off of their plate. And I know it comes from a place of kindness when you go, hey, let's get together for a coffee. Don't put the onus on the person, because it burdens. It is a weight. When you say, let's get together, make the suggestion. Say, listen, I'm going to pick you up. We're going to go for a coffee, or I'm going to come over right now and we're going to go out for a walk. Don't put the onus on them, because it's something that becomes overwhelming. With our new brain, it becomes difficult. And little things that would probably not rattle the normal person, they sideline us because it is something that is it's really difficult. And the other thing is, you don't have to have the perfect words. And sometimes just saying, listen, I don't know what to say. I just wanted to let you know that I'm so deeply affected by your loss, or even getting them, just tell me your favorite story or one of your favorite stories about Maddie. And that's something that it means more to a parent. But if the difference between silence and calling them up, call them up every single time. It doesn't need to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really good advice. I mean, I can't say that I've been through what you've been through, but I have experienced grief, having lost both my parents in the last 12 months. And I had never experienced grief like it. I'd never lost anybody really close to me before. And I got thoroughly sick of people telling me to be kind to myself. And I know that sounds ridiculous because it comes from a great place, like people saying, just, and all they're saying is just, make sure you look after yourself and don't overdo it. But I got to the point where I was saying, of course I'm going to be kind to myself. Like, what a silly thing to I don't, but I got almost irritated by it. There was an anger connected to that for me, and I think I was actually angry. The grief was the trigger that was making me angry. It wasn't really the people or what they were saying, but it was just this feeling that people were trying to give me advice, which is exactly what you've been talking about. Actually, thinking about it this whole time, you don't necessarily want somebody to fix it. You just need them to be present.
They can't fix it, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's true. But the other thing I found as well, and I know we talked the last time about you losing both your parents, and I lost my mom in February. But it's interesting because I felt Maddie on my shoulder as my mom was passing. And I think probably enduring what I went through with Maddie, and you know what, there is the kind of the order of life. My mom, I had a great relationship with her. She was 81. She had a rich life, but I had this sense of calm while I was passing, and it happened really suddenly. It happened basically stroke to ending within almost 24 hours. But a sense of calm about me, and I feel that was Maddie. The other thing is too, my dad, who my mom and dad had been married for 61 years, and my dad had never experienced the level of grief that he was going through. And just being able to be there for my dad, to kind of walk him through, hey, it's a fucking awful, sorry if...
No, you can swear. It's all good.
Oh, good. All right. Floodgates are open now. So just being able to kind of share with my dad kind of a bit of the journey. And everyone's journey is different, but just say, Dad, this is going to be the worst freaking thing you've ever gone through. And there's not a time frame or what you should or shouldn't be doing. And I think just being able to share with him my experience has really helped him kind of navigate that journey. I think it also gave him perspective of how gutted I was 10 years ago or 11 years ago when I lost Maddie, because he was sad, but it was nothing compared to what you experience as a parent. But I'm glad that I'm I'm there for my dad.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And it's good that you've been able to draw on that experience. And like you say, it's given him perspective on what you've been through too. So one of the things I just wanted to talk to you about quickly was in your LinkedIn profile, you talk about the word fine. And you talk about when someone says they're fine, what does that mean? How do we unpick that? And when did you first sort of notice that as a concept, if you will?
well, I don't think I identified it. I know I've written about it quite a few times, but fine is fine is like the safe word that a lot of kids use. Well, it's not even kids. We as adults, right? It almost becomes this um, safe word that there's something there, but I don't want you to press me beyond this. I think there's a couple of different ways you do it. You need to frame the question differently. If you ask your kid, how's their day at school? And they go, fine. Well, if you ask a more of an open-ended question, or even something that they can calibrate or give you some greater definition, that's like on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your day today? Which, if they tell you it's a 10, well, they're in a pretty good place. But chances are, if they say they're a 5 or 6, that opens the door for another question, provided we don't jump into fix it mode, right? So, or another, when they say fine, or even something as innocent as, how are you really feeling? And you can tell often by their reactions. Sometimes they'll just kind of say, no, I'm fine. And sometimes they are fine.
Yeah.
But I think without kind of prodding a little bit more, I think we tend to accept words for what we want to believe they mean, as opposed to what they really mean.
Yeah. I remember hearing something a couple of years ago. I can't remember the exact words, but it's like you have to ask twice. So whenever you say, hey, how are you doing? And everyone goes, hey, I'm fine. How are you? So yeah, I'm fine. And then you have to ask again, how are you really doing? How is everything? Because it becomes this standard response. We often greet each other by saying, how are you? I say, yeah, I'm fine. How are you? Fine.
Yeah, well, or how was your weekend, right? It's the ultimate small talk. And
Nah.
we ask, and sometimes we really don't want to know.
Yeah.
It's right. It's like, oh, geez. Well, you know what? How long do you have? Do you have 10 minutes? I really want to tell you what the truth is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
be careful what you ask for, right? But at the same time, I think, yeah, we tend to be a polite society, but we just want to know surface level information sometimes. And I think if we really care about people, we really want to ask in a genuine and authentic way.
Yeah, I agree.
To be prepared if someone tells you what you don't necessarily want to hear.
Yeah, yeah. And it is interesting as well because I was actually having this conversation with some girlfriends. We'd gone out for a brunch to celebrate my friend's 50th the other week. And we were all sat round and we were going at it properly, like chatting away. You know, I mean, while nothing could have stopped us, we were all in full flow. And I sat with them afterwards and I said, you know, women do this really well. We get together and we talk. We talk it all out. We put the world to rights. And I'm not sure men are quite as good at that. They tend to get together. I listen to them at the rugby club when I'm out with my boys and they're like, all right, mate, how are you? Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. Cheers. And they have a drink and they go, oh, shame about the game the other day. Yeah, shame about the game. Yeah. See anything good at the cinema? Yeah. But it's very surface level. There's nothing deep. Whereas women, I think, do tend to kind of analyze and dig deep into situations and talk about things in a totally different way. And I guess that would translate to teenagers too. Girls perhaps are better at sharing with their friends, do you think, than boys? How does that translate?
Yeah, I think this generation is a little bit more accepting. Mental health is on their radar. I still think there is this macho aspect that guys often need to kind of portray, right?
Yeah.
Whether they feel it or not. It's like, hey, there's a reason why there's 60% of females or teenage girls are really dealing with some really heavy emotional stuff. Guys, it's like 30%. But women attempt suicide 3 to 4 times more, but there's 80% more deaths by suicide from teenage boys than girls, or
Is
by
that
elderly women. And like, it's exacerbated by drugs and alcohol. 50% of suicides involve drugs or alcohol.
And is that accidental in some cases?
Well, I think that we lose our inhibition. We lose our fear. It's just like, we don't know. We're not of sound mind. Unfortunately, that's a reality. We don't make the best decisions when we've been drinking, right? So I think boys definitely struggle with openness and authenticity, but there is a movement to more vulnerable men. And in our school group, there's a number of groups that have been started by dads who want to be more authentic, want to be more real, want to be more sharing what's going on in their life. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why women who live guys, because we tend to keep so much of it inside, which definitely weighs on our vital organs. But yeah, it is funny that the dynamic between men and women, boys and girls, we don't grow out of that. We just kind of continue on that path, right?
Definitely. My children know words I didn't know when I was that age. I never knew anything about narcissism or gaslighting or words like that when I was in my teens. I don't think gaslighting had even been invented when I was.
There were probably other words for it. They're just assholes.
Probably. But I do think it's really wonderful that we are starting to see a change, that men and boys are becoming more emotionally available. And I do think my husband, that is something he does really well with my boys. You know, he is emotionally available for them. And I'm very grateful for that. He told me off the other day because I'd got back from somewhere and he was like, oh, he was just telling me about something. And I'd just kind of just burst in, you know, and it just got him to open up about something specific. And I was, oh, sorry, I didn't know.
But you make a really good point too, Fran, because I think the emotional vulnerability of our children starts at home. And I think if we make it okay to talk about sensitive stuff, not being dismissive, not, you know what, have those important conversations and let our kids know that we have failure, that we have shit that happens in our life, and that it's okay to talk about it. And that is just part of life.
Yeah.
And without talking about it, we don't acknowledge it. We don't teach our kids that, we don't give them the ability or the forum to be able to naturally talk about what's going on in their life. So we need to parent and share in the way that we expect our kids to parent, or our kids to share as well.
Yeah. And because we live in this filtered reality through social media, where everybody just sees everybody's best bits all the time, and the kids think that's how life is. So it's really important, I think, as a parent, to make sure that they know that it's not rosy all the time. You're not going to burden the children with your problems necessarily, but I do talk to the boys about what's going on in life and make sure that we are living in the present and not the filtered reality. It's so important.
And that's the thing. Social media, it tends to feed our kids with this unrealistic expectation of what life is all about. Man, anyone's ever seen anything on my social media, they go, oh shit, there's a shot of reality. I have this unfiltered part of myself, and I share what I share because parents need to understand that, and our kids need to understand that as well.
Well, Chris, I think we're going to have to wrap it up because we've been going longer than an hour, and I really want to thank you for your honesty in having this conversation. It can't be easy, but I have a huge amount of respect for what you're doing, and I wish you every success. If anybody obviously has been affected by anything we've talked about today, I will make sure there's links in the show notes. But if anybody wants to reach out to you specifically or work with you directly, what's the best way to do it?
I think if you go to the website, thementorwell.com, I'm Chris Coulter. I'm available on LinkedIn. A lot of my posts are there. It's not just doom and gloom. I think there's a lot of parents who really get a lot of stuff from what I write about. And I get probably 20 direct messages every week from parents who share with me what they can't even share with their family or friends. And then if you are interested in a parent support group, when something feels off, there is connection through my website to it, but it's available on the school platform.
Yes, we can put a link to that, can't we?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm so grateful for your time, and keep up the good work. I just think it's amazing.
Thanks, Fran. Appreciate you having me on.